Hi everyone, I'm Candace the Shaman.
And I am Spirit Medium Jenn.
Here is a mini clip of our episode. If you would like to watch more, you can click on the link below.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing videos from our podcast. Yeah, that makes sense. I think too that when it comes to past lives, people don't necessarily agree or understand, but then there's also the space of like, why would I want to remember? Why live in the past? And exploring past life regression, and you do hypnotherapy with past life regression and readings and Akashic records and all of the things, but it's not to hold us back or to hold us like to not live our life because we're too worried about exploring past experiences. But there are some things that do factor in that can lead to our life here.
Mm-hmm.
Just like we have ancestral DNA, we have things that are passed down genetically from generation to generation. Science has proven that, right? We also have mental, physical, emotional, all these things spiritual that are brought down. And so if you could imagine even just knowing the generational chains and the generational clearing, is there sometimes are things that do carry on with us from lifetime to lifetime.
Yes.
And I was listening to a book called Many Lives. Is it Same Master, Many Lives? Have you heard that?
Yeah.
It's something like that. Many masters, same life. I'll have to look it up. But in this concept is he was a hypnotherapist, and he would help people, and it would bring up like all these different past lives without him really meaning to jump into that space. And he did notice that a lot of times maybe someone who might have a physical element showing up here could be from a past life experience. So he talks about how one man, he had a lot of heart problems, and he could not for the life of him stop drinking alcohol. And so this was kind of like his last thing to keep his family together. And he's like, I don't believe in any of this stuff, but this is the last thing that I have to try to keep my marriage together, essentially. And they go into hypnotherapy, and he brings up this experience where he had something, or something happened to his heart, and essentially that he passed from that. And it was like he could see it bleeding into this life in his heart space. And so that's like a very extreme case, but it's not possible.
Absolutely. Because you think about energy is like a web, right? It's like a web of energy. There is no exact cutoff date or cutoff spot from one lifetime to another. It's still energetically woven in to the whole, right? And so this is why too, that whatever we do sends a ripple effect throughout this web of creation. Everything, the energy we bring into a space, the intention behind we do it, it sends a wave of energy throughout this web. And there is no such thing, really, truly. We have time and space, and the concept of time and space in order for us to understand our journey and explore this journey. But when you journey, and we've talked about what journeying is in our last couple of episodes, we've talked about journey a couple of times and did a whole episode. But when you journey and explore this web of life, you can go backwards, forwards. There's also endless dimensions within this particular life that you are aware of. And people don't realize that they can shift their energy into different timelines of the same life. And you can raise octave or energetic levels and outcomes within this life. When we start exploring past lives and the Akashic records, this awareness becomes very real and strong. It's like, wow, so this is why in this lifetime I have this, let's say, unrealistic fear or phobia, and I can't place where it was rooted. And then I explore a past life and I find that something happened where this experience happened that put such tremendous fear in my experience. And that energy had a ripple effect into this present life that's been kind of woven. And what's amazing about healing, right, Jen? We've had this experience again and again. People overcomplicate healing because they think that you got to go through all of these steps. The most powerful step towards healing is just awareness.
Yeah.
It's not so much like for you figuring out how to fix it or what you got to do. It's like just be with this for a moment.
Uh-huh.
And then 9 times out of 10, that energy will shift on its own. And then the energy of wisdom will rise up inside of you, and you will take that information and you'll know what you need to do next. But again and again, when we've done these past life regressions with myself or you or other people, it's like those energies, once they become aware of where it was rooted, all of a sudden it doesn't have the power over the person anymore. It's like you'll, even if the energy starts or that phobia starts to, poke its ugly head a little bit, it's like as soon as you remember that past life regression, say, oh, that was rooted when I had this experience. It didn't happen here. I'm okay. I'm safe.
I'm
That
safe.
energy dissipates. And eventually it just goes. Like you just don't have it. It has no trigger on your energetic field anymore. And that's so liberating, right?
Absolutely.
So that's one of the
Absolutely.
beautiful things about exploring this is that you can alleviate that bondage, that those triggers, those things that are inside of you that you couldn't make sense of. It's like, can I share a story with myself?
Yes, absolutely.
So I was studying with my shaman and we were exploring the web of life. And she's like, I want you to go and explore a past life that is energetically affecting you in this life in the way of your fears. And so as I explored this, I'm like, what are my fears? And I had an unrealistic fear, a fear I don't know where it came from. And it was the fear that I would be accused of shoplifting. I have never shoplift. This is not something that I do, but it really took away from my joy. It was like I couldn't go just shopping with girlfriends or friends or family and just have a great old time. It was like it was weird. It was like, oh girl, I'm like, I'm not taking anything. Like I'd have this weird feeling like, even if I wasn't physically saying that, but I'd be thinking that in my mind.
That's
And
so
it would
interesting.
create this weird fear and tension. So I couldn't like truly enjoy myself. Well, so that was what I wanted to explore. I'm like, where is this rooted? Like, where did this come from? And so I did the past life regression with my shaman. It took me back. It was the 1300s. I was a little boy. I was, I think, 11 or 12 at the time. And people were shopping in the market. And I was um, misunderstood, not misunderstood, but they accused me of stealing. And they thought it was me. It was actually a different boy. But at the time, they thought it was me. So I was accused wrongly of stealing. They ended up bearing me up to my neck. And the punishment for stealing was being stoned to death. So I was buried up to my neck and I was stoned to death in that lifetime. So she had me go through that lifetime and go through the death process. What was really interesting though is even there were certain people that I was very intimidated by in this life that showed up as one of the people that had stoned me. So there was a recognition that the reason I had this unrealistic fear towards this person, that was because they were in that front row of stone and I saw their faces and the cruelty. And it just affected me deeply on an energetic level. So anyway, I crossed over, I went in between lives and I spoke with that particular energy or personality of my soul. And I said, I am from a different time. And I want you to know that you are safe, that you don't need to carry this energy any longer, that I am happy, that you are happy, that we are one and you are safe. So anyway, I came out of that past life. And after that, now that I go shopping, I never had that energy. It was like, and it was funny because I didn't even realize it until one day I'm like, wait a minute, where is it? And then I realized it was gone.
It's gone. It's no longer there.
It just wasn't there. So anyway, it's interesting. And this is what I found again and again is that once we explore the root of that energy just it transmutes and it releases its attachment to you.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, and for those who might not be fully into this whole past life idea, you could also, I know before I used to think like, oh, maybe that's just an ancestor's experience that you're connecting into. And if you want to think that, that's totally fine too, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no wrong or right way. We're not saying you have to believe in this, but we both have definitely experienced some crazy healing that has come about because of that. And so I love that you're talking about how it just kind of left. It wasn't fully in your space anymore with the shoplifting.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I've experienced quite a bit of different things in that space as well. As we're talking, I'm like recollecting like 4 different major experiences that I've experienced just in the time that we have explored past lives together. And I'm just trying to decide on which one to share because there's so many good
The one
experiences.
that really stood out for me, Jen, was when you talked about like where is this witch wound rooted?
Yes.
And that was at the very beginning of our work together. And you're like, I have this fear and I don't know where it's rooted. And I was like, let's go explore it. Let's see if we
Yeah.
can find where it was rooted. And that
That's
was
true.
powerful.
Yeah, because it was so interesting is I have always been super drawn to spirituality, and I also felt extremely wounded, like to the next level, and this fear of standing in my truth, of speaking out, of anything. And I remember even you were like, "Hey, let's explore the possibility of like oracle cards or tarot." And I was like, "Absolutely not. There's no way, Candace.
Yes.
No, no, no." And you're like, just think about it and just see how it fits. And so now I'm like, since this past life, and we'll go into that, I feel like I've changed my perspective in a lot of ways where I feel like I don't think that something has to be bad or wrong. And there's good in everything. And I didn't experience that before until after this past life. So we went into the sacred meadow, which we posted about that journey last time.
Mhm.
And in the sacred meadow, we climbed the tree and we were brought up kind of like floating into the sky into the space of like this higher council above, which we'll have to do a whole podcast on, lower, middle, and upper realms. But
Yes.
I was so shamed to be standing before the high council. And for those who don't know, the high council is like Heavenly Father, Heavenly Mother. It's like Jesus, Buddha, Allah. There's like Mary Magdalene. There's like so many different people who are there who have had a very great impact upon the world that has been
Mm.
almost like mega thought leaders, is what
Mhm.
I like to kind of think of it as. And I remember standing up there just being so ashamed. Like, I'm like, I'm not worthy to be up here. And you're like, well, why do you feel that way? And then all of a sudden, it was like we like rode this web, and all of a sudden we were in this forest. And as we're moving forward, it's like we're walking, and I just noticed people behind me with like pitchforks and what are those sticks that they're like burning? Like
Mhm.
pitchforks and like lighters, like sticks with like lights that you're walking, fires, you're walking in the dark meadow.
Torches, yeah,
Torches, that's
torches.
the word. And we come upon this lady, and this was during the Salem witch trial time. That was crazy. My light just got brighter.
Yeah.
The Salem witch trials. And I saw her, and it was like we were accusing her and like getting ready to burn her at the stake. And I remember looking in her eyes and being like, yes, this is her. Like I told him, like, yes, this is her. I turned her in, and I remember watching her burn. And I remember staring at her and just watching in her eyes. And I felt so shameful because I had participated in those the dances, the ceremonies, the things that they experienced in the woods, which, as we've talked about the witch wound, yes, there's light and dark in all things, but that doesn't have to mean they were only doing dark things. They were just very aware of spiritual and energetic
Mm-hmm.
connection in the physical realm. They were
Yeah.
very spiritual and energetic in a world that solely focused on mental and physical survival. And I remember participating and being a part of what she was experiencing. And then I turned her in. And I
And
remember,
yeah,
go
and that
ahead.
guilt, I remember too, like you feeling like, and what you discovered, like it was so hard to deal with that shame and guilt, but it was also a form you were trying to survive. Like you could have just as easily had been burned at the stake. And that's what was so hard, because it was a decision of self-protection, of survival. And that was so powerful, Jen. I mean, yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but I just remember
No,
like
you're
that
great.
feeling. It was very powerful.
It's so interesting because even speaking about it, I feel like my
Feel it.
throat is like kind of full.
Mhm.
But the thing about that too is I watched her burn and I was like, I am so ashamed of this. And I even remember in this life going to school when we had that week about the witch trials and we watched a movie upon it, and I made myself sick to not go to school. I was like, I can't go to school.
Wow.
And I
I didn't
remember
know that.
thinking, I can't believe they're still talking about this. And then the next day, I had a massive headache. And for 2 days after, I didn't go to school because I didn't want to hear about it. And so that dawned on me after. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so connected. This is all one area. And then, kind of like you said, I went back into this in between that life and my life now. And I was able to talk to that woman, and we were able to find a lot of um, understanding and closure and completion, I would say. But it was something that was definitely needful. And I look back and I'm like, wow. And now since then, I'm like a lot more open. Like everyone has their own spiritual journey, and mine doesn't have to be theirs, and theirs doesn't have to be mine. And it's okay to stand in my truth and to share myself. And I don't have to be so fearful. So then when we came
Yes.
across the book Witch by Lisa Lister, all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, this book is amazing.
It was liberation and a book.
Oh, oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's just one of my experiences when it comes to past life that really was really empowering for myself.
Yeah. For me, it was an experience of forgiveness and compassion.
Yeah.
It was a scary time to be in this world. And there's so much wounding that has taken place around our spirituality and around this self empowerment and self exploration of who you really are. There's been major wounding there. And so it's like, even this whole idea of exploring past lives when you've been told there aren't past lives or there's no such thing as reincarnation, when you do actually open yourself up, it doesn't take you away from your core belief system. It just cultivates a way for you to understand how magnificent you are, for one, two, how everything is energetically connected, that there is no such thing as time and space. It also helps you really cultivate a lot of forgiveness for yourself, the times that you experience life where you were not awake and deep in the sleep of Maya or the world. It also helps you cultivate forgiveness for others, because when you do a past life regression, and we're going to talk about the Akashic records next, but when you explore these things, it's not just understanding like where that root causes, right? What is that trigger, where it was rooted, but seeing that life, how it panned out. Because after we did that, we went to like different parts of your life, including the time of death and going and um, dying and going into the other side. And once you go to the other side of the in between, you get to understand how other people saw things and why they made those decisions that they made. And it doesn't make things right or wrong. It just, having that awareness and understanding helps you cultivate compassion and understanding, and you can cultivate that forgiveness, because forgiveness, again, it never says, hey, it's okay that you did X, Y, and Z, right?
Right.
It's saying, look, I understand that that had to happen for the growth of everyone involved. I understand where you were coming from, and I
Yes.
release you, or I release myself. Like, just even
Yeah.
that experience that you had, it was a journey of self-forgiveness, because you were trying to survive at a very scary time in history. And that wounding and that knowing inside of yourself was an awful place to be. It was a terrible way to live your life. And when you were able to see that from a bigger perspective, you were able to understand, not only to forgive yourself, but also understand your value coming as your future self into a time where this was rooted, and be able to heal yourself and say, you just didn't
Yeah.
know who you were, or they didn't know who they were. They didn't know what they were doing, because all these people hurt people when they don't remember. For watching Modern Sages, don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
We are so grateful for your support. We have an Instagram account as well as on Facebook. We have our podcast, which is the Modern Sages podcast.
And we are so excited to launch our Gifts of Spirit classes in our Modern Sages Mystery School.
Absolutely. Oh, we're so excited. So we're going to link the information below in the show notes for more information about our mystery school.